Hello there friends and welcome. For today's BG3 guide we have a very fun and quite unique build. After all, I think we are past the classic cookie cutter builds, right? This time we'll be going with a Paladin Druid multi-class that I like to call the Rainbow Paladin because of how much extra elemental sources of damage you'll be stacking on every hit. We have Acid, Thunder, Double Necrotic, Fire, Double Psychic, Poison, and even up to 4 sources of extra radiant damage. We are talking about around 12 entire sources of elemental stacks, which can go even higher during battle depending on a few abilities. As a matter of fact, by simply attacking the enemy, or even better when smiting them, it's almost as if you are puking a rainbow at them, right, from all of the stacked elemental sources, to the point where you can eventually even one-shot even high hit point enemies, all on Tactician mode of course. Together with very nice tools from the Druid class, such as temporary hit points on demand, and most importantly, summons. Amusingly enough, this character can even work eventually as a Necromancer of sorts. Despite the fact you are a Paladin, we have more than 10 summons coming just from our main Rainbow Paladin character. So if you want to combine fun and style, this is the way to go. So without further ado, let us get into our Rainbow Paladin Elemental Lord Smiter build, first with character creation of course. When it comes to race, as always it doesn't matter that much, but a few can offer some nice benefits. My preferred pick for this build would be Tiefling, and Zerial Tiefling, as you get free smites, which of course means more elemental damage on demand. The Thaumaturgy cantrip can be nice as well, as a way of increasing your intimidation checks, as we'll get decent enough charisma. You can also go with Half Orc for higher critical damage, but this build won't really get high critical chance until way later in the game. Half Elf and the Wood Elf variant, or just the normal Wood Elf, for higher movement, which helps a lot because you are essentially a melee build. And lastly, Githyanki. They have some nice enough bonuses, but most importantly, some gear in the game will be boosted if you are a Githyanki, including our ultimate sword. But for that, you can just use a mask or a spell that turns you into a Githyanki appearance-wise anyways, and it will work to proc these bonuses. As far as class, there's actually a lot of ways you can build this character depending on if you want more elemental damage stacks on hit or more attacks per turn. And I'll give you ways of doing both, right, as we progress through our build. Regardless, there's not that many classes in the game that directly enhance your elemental damage, at least as far as melee or ranged attacks. Paladins of course get smite as early as level 2, while their main smite is radiant only, it doesn't cost a bonus action. Unlike the other smites which can provide elemental damage at the cost of a bonus action, I'd rather just the normal divine smite. Second, Druid and Spore Druid. As early as the 2nd level, you'll be able to enhance all of your attacks, both ranged and melee, with 1d6 necrotic damage. Quite handy to have because of the minor 2-level investment. Cleric does get elemental damage on hit too, but only at level 8+, which I find far too much of an investment, if you know what I mean. As far as monks, the open hand monk gets it at level 5 to level 6, but it's limited to unarmed attacks only. And some of the extra sources you get from, let's say, gear, well, they won't work with unarmed, which is why I'd rather not use it for this build. While other classes like Fighter and Rogue are for providing extra attacks, not really extra elemental on hit. I'd rather start this character as a Paladin because we have heavy armor proficiency for decent enough armor class, so you won't need high dexterity. Together of course with our smites as early as possible, for loads of extra damage. For the subclass, Oath of Vengeance, for its nice Inquisitor Smite special ability, which enhances your attacks with radiant damage equal to your charisma modifier. It does cost a channel oath charge, but this gets replenished on a short rest, and well, it's a bonus action, you can even pre-buff with it ideally. At level 3 you also have a very nice way of getting advantage on enemies with your attacks, for higher 2-hit chance and criticals. Now let's cover our stats. I'd rather go all out into strength. I mean, you can go with charisma and multi-class with Warlock, the Blade Warlock, right, for charisma 2-hit and damage on your attacks. It's just that I've already done a build like that, you can check to the side here. I want something new and unique for this one. Plus, it's very easy to increase your strength, even up to 22, As far as charisma, you don't necessarily need very high charisma with this build. It's mostly going to enhance your Inquisitor Smite ability. You can start with either 14 or 16, which also helps with dialogue checks if you want to be the main face of the party as the main character. Dexterity is dumpable because we have heavy armor proficiency. You can even go as low as 8. The only problem is, look, if you have 8 dexterity, you also have very low initiative, which may or may not be a problem for you. The thing is, all my other builds have high dexterity and high initiative, so I might as well dump dexterity for once. And don't forget, you can always use the gloves that set your dexterity to 18, found as early as chapter 1, at the cost of very minor elemental damage, around 3. And the last points are up to you. I like wisdom because you'll be going with druid, and also so you won't get charmed or crowd controlled by enemies as much. Of course, you can also go with 10 dexterity for no initiative penalty. For skills, the main dialogue ones, of course, because of our decent charisma, intimidation, persuasion. Soldier can be quite handy, so that we have athletics to resist being pushed, especially into, well, you know, the void, as to not get instantly killed. We have very high strength after all, and intimidation for free, which means you get to select something else, like insight. Even deception can work too, but we are a paladin, it's not much of a paladin skill, right? Anyways, that's it for character creation. For the second level onwards, I'll show the build progression as a human, because like I said, it doesn't really matter that much. Anyways, level 2 is of course when we get our smites. For the fighting style, great weapon fighting is the way to go. This is even better for our build because we have so many sources of extra elemental damage, and usually it's 1d6 or 1d4. Each of these individual procs will be re-rolled if you ever get a 1, for higher average damage of course. When it comes to spells, please remember that I already have a best spells guide, you can check to the side here, where I cover each one in depth. For now, let's just keep it simple. Shield of Faith is one of the most useful ones to increase your AC early on, for high amounts. Protection from evil and good can help as well against some enemy types. The normal smite doesn't even need to be prepared, you can always cast it. Bless I'd rather leave for a cleric. You can of course go with heroism too, which can help a lot early. And the other smites if you want. Divine Favor is very handy as well, for even higher radiant damage. After all, we have radiant by virtue of being an Oath of Vengeance Paladin together with this. It does require concentration, which means it will clash with, let's say, Shield of Faith or Bless. So just take note of that. And if you really want a secondary smite, my preferred pick would be Wrathful, because it frightens enemies for 2 whole turns. Searing Smite can be acquired for free as a Zerial Tiefling, by the way. For level 3, by virtue of being an Oath of Vengeance Paladin, you get the very useful Vow of Enmity ability. It's a bonus action, but quite powerful in what it does. By spending a channel oath charge, you'll simply get advantage on all attack rolls against an enemy. It's not only a boss killer, but amazing for any enemies you're having trouble beating. After all, it's both normal and higher critical chance of hitting the enemy. Level 4 Paladin is first the Lay of Hands ability, which can help for healing. But most importantly, our first feat. Just like spells, I also have a best feats guide you can check here. But anyways, what you really want is Great Weapon Master. For the huge plus 10 damage on every single strike. It's not elemental damage, but still amazing. Whenever you get a critical hit, or most importantly kill an enemy with your melee weapon, you'll get an extra attack as a bonus action. Which is why I said eventually chances are you wouldn't want to spend a bonus action with the secondary smite abilities. Better just use it for attacks. Yes, this does come with a -5 to attack downside, you can turn it off and on at will. And as I've explained before, there are many ways of getting advantage to overcome this, including the very ability we got at the last level as an Oath of Vengeance Paladin. Level 5 will be our last Paladin level for the very handy extra attacks, so it's already 3 when you consider the bonus from Great Weapon Master, 4 with haste, 5 with the Elixir of Bloodlust. All at this very level. Oath of Vengeance will grant you Misty Step, which is also very good, as a means of teleporting, well, wherever you want. And you might want to prepare Branding Smite for some annoying enemies that constantly go invisible, especially a certain boss at the second act, but well, it's optional anyways. Level 6 is when I would multiclass, and as I explained before, Druid and Spore Druid can acquire extra elemental damage very early, so to me it's my preferred pick. You can of course already get started into, let's say, Rogue and the Thief subclass at level 3 for an extra bonus action which can provide more elemental damage, especially with certain gear choices. Or the 2 levels in Fighter for the extra action through action surge. I'd much rather Druid because the whole point of the build is as many sources of elemental damage as possible on hit. Plus, you'll get to use the Druid extra spell slots for even more Paladin smites, before having to long rest again. The cantrips don't matter outside of guidance. And as far as spells, honestly just Long Strider, because at the very least you can cast this an infinite amount of times to increase speed, out of battle of course. Like I said, you'll just be using the slots for smites all day. At the second level we can become a Circle of Spores Druid for the very handy Symbiotic Entity, which means 1d6 necrotic damage on all attacks, together with 8 temporary HP. Now this only works while you have the temporary HP, right? It can be somewhat annoying for a melee character because you might as well end up losing the HP fast, but this build will eventually get way more anyways. Amusingly enough, while it's not per hit, you can also use a reaction to cast Halo of Spores for an extra 1d4 necrotic damage, doubled when under Symbiotic Entity. Speak with Animals can be nice as well for some extra dialogue. Now, because we already have the extra damage from Druid, you can multiclass now, and as I said, 3 levels of Rogue for the extra bonus action, and you would still have space for 2 Fighter, which means the extra attack from Action Surge. It's just that I've already done a lot of builds with this exact combination in the past. I really want something different this time instead of the classic cookie cutter builds, if you know what I mean, which is why I'll be going all out into Druid from now on. This way we can acquire more and more spell slots for extra smites, more temporary HP as well because it's 4 per Druid class level, and even higher spell damage because eventually, by remaining a full Druid, from now on you'll get even up to level 5 spell slots, and the higher the spell level you can cast, the higher your smite damage when upscaled. Like I said, you have these other options, right? I'm all about providing you with them so you can pick what works best for you. For the second feat and another benefit of remaining a Druid, ability improvement and strength. It would already become 20 at this point from the Hag boss fight at chapter 1, and 22 even from the potion you can get during the Act 2 Asterian Vampire quest. You'll even get up to level 3 Druid spells at level 5, including amusingly enough Animate Dead because we are a Spore Druid, which means that despite not being an Oathbreaker Paladin, you can still have undead summons. It's kinda silly and ironic, right, because you are smiting enemies with a rainbow and you also have potentially an army of the dead following you, but hey, it works. As a matter of fact, at level 6 Druid, so level 11, you even get access to the special Fungal Zombie summons, and you can have 4 of them at the same time. Hooray for being a good aligned Necromancer Rainbow Paladin, right? Meanwhile, at level 12, our last level, you'll get both level 4 and level 5 spells, and even more summons, right? From Conjure Minor Elemental, 2 summons at once, and also the Dryad and her Trent Lover. As I've already covered in my best summons guide, you can check to the side here. So while late game only, this character can be both a Rainbow Smiter and a Summoner / Necromancer. Kinda fun, right? Alright, now let us cover gear for our Rainbow Smiter Elemental Lord Paladin Druid. For the helmet, ultimately you have 2 options. The Horns of the Berserker, which can add 1d4 necrotic damage. It says 2 here, but it's actually 1d4, as you can see on our weapon. Plus even a very nice +2 bonus to attack rolls when attacking creatures that have already taken damage. Otherwise, the classic Seravox Horn Helmet for an increase to critical hits. As far as the second act, you can always go with either the Covert Cowl or the Dark Justiciar Helmet for the same benefit, +1 to critical hits. Even the Diadem of Arcane Synergy can work for +3 extra damage based on your Charisma, and very early at the beginning of Act 1, I would just go with the classic Haste Helm for higher movement. For cloaks, I really like the Cloak of Displacement because this character, well, we can equip heavy armor, but we won't have ultimate AC. I mean, It's still missing +4, 2 from haste and the other from the Shield of Faith spell, so you'd have what, 26? Together with Warding Bond for full resistances, it's not like you'll be getting hit that much. But the Cloak of Displacement can really help by forcing enemies' attack come at disadvantage. Otherwise, the classic Shade Slayer Cloak for, just like their helm, more critical hits. Speaking about armor, as I said, we can go with any heavy armor, ultimately Hell Dusk, for the highest AC boost possible, together with the very useful 3 less damage taken from all sources property, which by the way is quite amazing when you combine it with the extra resistances from the Warding Bond spell. But earlier, even during Act 1, I have quite a soft spot for the Luminous armor. While it is just medium and you won't get a lot of AC with it because we tanked our dexterity, its effect is extremely powerful. Whenever you deal radiant damage, and well, we have what, 4 entire sources of radiant, you'll cause a radiant shockwave which will debuff enemies' attack rolls by -2 per stack. Each time you attack, that's a -2 stack to all nearby enemies, which can eventually stack even up to -9 or -10, so whatever possibly remains alive after your Rainbow Smite onslaught, well, they'll be debuffed to the max when it comes to their attack rolls. For gloves, ultimately Hell Dusk because of the very nice 1-6 extra fire damage, although very early in the game you can just equip a torch, drop it on the ground, and use the dip action to buff your weapon with 1d4 fire. Ideally out of battle for pre-buffing and ambushes. While this is Act 3 only for the second act, you can easily go with the Dark Justiciar Gauntlets for 1d4 necrotic damage on hit. There's also the Martial Exertion Gloves for an extra attack per short rest. And don't forget, even as early as Act 1, you can always go for the very useful Gloves of the Underdog for advantage on all attack rolls, so long as you are surrounded by 2 or more foes. Very easy when you are at melee range, of course. I mean, you can even go with the gloves that set your dexterity to 18. When it comes to boots, not as many, I'm afraid. The Speedy Light Feet can help as far as enhancing this character's elemental damage on hit even further, because whenever you dash, you'll get lightning charges for extra lightning damage on hit. It's just that it costs a bonus action, and I'd rather use this only if you went with the Thief multiclass, right? 3 levels of Thief Rogue, because you'll then get 2 bonus actions. Otherwise, just the classic Disintegrating Nightwalkers for Misty Step for free. For amulets, Broodmother's Revenge is definitely the best choice for this build. Whenever you are healed by any source, you'll get to deal an additional 1d6 poison damage on hit. Except, it's more like 1d4, it's another display bug. It is very easy to heal your character, and quite efficient as well, because even if you don't need hit points, you can still apply cumulative effects like Blade Ward, Bless, temporary HP, and now poison damage on hit, through certain gear choices that I cover in my Shadowheart tank build guide. Anyways, 1d4 is 1d4 and we want our elemental rainbow to truly shine. For rings, there's a lot of options too, but for higher damage, the Caustic Band found as early as Chapter 1 for 2s damage, combined with the Strange Conduit Ring for 1d4 psychic damage when concentrating on a spell. Very easy to do as a paladin, right? Because you have what? Both Divine Favor and Shield of Faith. And the Callous Glow Ring for 2 radiant damage on hit. Now you can of course also go with the classic Risky Ring as to provide advantage on all attacks. It's just that I really wanted to stack as many elements possible for a true Giga Rainbow. Now let us cover weapons and consumables. For weapons, I enjoy great swords, you have plenty of them, and the cleave action can help quite a lot early game by attacking multiple targets when you're still limited to 1 attack per round. Anyways, my preferred pick for this character is the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane. It has 2 main benefits. First, an extra 1d6 psychic damage so long as you are a Githyanki. You can either be one, as early as character creation, or simply change into one through the mask of the Shapeshifter. You don't even need it equipped later. Amusingly enough, you can acquire this sword as early as Act 1, despite the fact by default it's Act 3 only. As much as I really wanted this build to work with the Hellbeard Halberd for a static 6 poison damage, as far as I've tested, it sadly does not stack with the extra poison damage from Broodmother's Revenge. It does have the highest static elemental damage out of all weapons. Essentially, as early as Act 1, you're already covered weapon choice-wise, and of course, even earlier at the prologue, you have the classic Everburn Blade for 1d4 fire damage. And for ranged weapons, definitely the Dead Shot ultimately for higher critical range, especially if you combine it with Saravox Helmet. And as far as consumables, as always, the Elixir of Bloodlust for even more attacks, because this build didn't really stack as many as possible, as we had to forsake some multiclassing options for higher elemental damage on hit. Lastly, this isn't exactly a consumable, rather a weapon, it's just that we don't want it equipped on our character, the Drake Throat Glaive. It lets you cast the extremely useful for this build Draconic Elemental Weapon ability. By default, the Elemental Weapon spell is only achievable by Paladins, and it takes quite a long time because it's level 3 spells only. With this, we get to do it for free. And you get to enhance any weapon. It doesn't have to be on the character that's equipped, right? You can equip it on a party member and buff your Rainbow Paladin with it instead, which is what I did. With 1d4 elemental damage of choice, I went with Thunder, but you can go with Lightning and Cold too, together with a very nice stacking +1 bonus to attack rolls as well. It's quite a loaded weapon for this ability alone, because it lasts until long rest and does not require concentration, unlike the normal spell variant of this. Honestly, the effect is so good that ideally you want this on every single character build possible, right? That wants to attack with melee or ranged weapons, because why not? It's free. And honestly, that's pretty much it, friends. As always, thank you for watching, and please remember to like, subscribe, and consider becoming a channel member if you can. I truly appreciate your support. Thank you for watching, and see you next time, friends, with more fun BG3 builds.